When was the Messiah born? Most of the church celebrates the birth of Christ on December 25th, even though we know that was not his birthday. But when was he actually born? And is it even important? I actually think it's important that we understand, even critical, the seasons and times of God. In Genesis 1:14, the scripture says, "Then God said, there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." Interestingly, the Hebrew word there for signs, or for seasons rather, is the Hebrew word moed, and it literally means divinely appointed times. And the word there for that's translated as signs is the Hebrew word at, and it literally means signals of something miraculous. So when you actually look at this in the Hebrew translation, it literally says of the lights in the heaven, referring to the sun and the stars, the moon, that let them be for signals of God's divinely appointed miraculous times. You know, Yeshua even rebuked the Pharisees because they didn't understand the appointed times of God. He said, "You guys are able to predict the weather, but you don't know the signs of the times." In 1 Chronicle 12 and 32, it references the tribe of Issachar, and it says about this particular tribe that they were unique in that they understood the signs of the times so that they knew what Israel should do, and all of their brethren were at their command. And this same context is at play here. This tribe literally understood the cosmos, and they understood from it the times and the seasons of God. So what's interesting that most people don't know is that the constellations actually have biblical significance and meaning. Now, I'm not talking about astrology here, okay, but pure astronomy as it is originally created. Uh, the gospel was actually written in the stars. So, for example, what we know of as Leo the lion is not really just Leo the lion, it's the Lion of Judah. How about Virgo the virgin represents the Virgin Mary? And Jupiter, being the largest planet in our solar system, the king planet, represents the Messiah. So, do you remember when the wise men came to Herod and said that they saw a sign in the heaven? Well, what was it that they saw? Well, first of all, it's important you understand that the cosmos is like a big clock. Every 70 years, Halley's Comet comes around. Um, every 365 days, the Earth goes around the moon. Every 30 days, the moon goes around the Earth. I mean, it's a huge clock. And so, if you actually rewind and you can go back and look at uh, some astronomy and even NASA's website and look at the alignment of the stars and the moon over different days and times. If you go back and look about 2,000 years ago, what was happening? Well, what was happening was Jupiter, which represents the king planet, was moving backwards, retrograde, into the womb area of Virgo the Virgin, and it came out 9 months later. So let me just pause there for a second because I want you to understand that the wise men, were not just wise men. The wise men were the sons of Issachar, whose First Chronicles 12 and 32 says that they were wise in that they understood the times of God so that they knew what Israel ought to do. Now, um, what they saw was Virgo the Virgin and the king planet Jupiter, which represents the Messiah, moving into the womb area of Virgo the Virgin, and it came out 9 months later on the Feast of Tabernacles. And this is one of the significant biblical feasts. We generally say feast, but the word for feast here is moed, or divine appointed time. You know, the scripture says in John 1 and 14 that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And then verse 114 says, "And the Word tabernacled among us." So this feast, this particular divinely appointed time, was a foreshadow of the time that God was to tabernacle among us. And by the way, when was Yeshua born? He would have been born around the Feast of Tabernacles. Matter of fact, There are 7 feasts that are written of in Leviticus 23. There's Passover, there's unleavened bread, there's first fruits, there is Pentecost, which takes place in the summer. So these takes place in the spring. This one begins the summer, Pentecost. The Hebrew word there is Shavuot. And then in the fall feast, there's the Feast of Trumpets, Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the Messiah is to fulfill all 7 of these feasts. Now, Passover he already fulfilled. He was the Passover lamb. He was the um, without sin, so he fulfilled unleavened bread. He was the first fruit of those that raised from the dead. Um, on Pentecost, he fulfilled in that he poured out his spirit unto all flesh. The next feast that he's to fulfill is the Feast of Trumpets. Now, this is a very interesting and significant day. Just kind of showing you here in 2017 the dates of these Moed or feast days. Again, that's a bad translation. The word there really is uh, Moedim, and it means divine appointed time. But you can see here that the Feast of Trumpets begins on September 20th, sundown on September 20th of 2017. Okay, the Feast of Trumpets takes place on the Hebrew calendar, the biblical calendar. It takes place on Tishri 1 and 2. It'd kind of be like saying September 1st and 2nd. Okay, it's not September 1st and 2nd. It actually would start on, again, sundown September 20th, but it's September or Tishri 1 and 2. Okay, that is the Feast of Trumpets date for 2017. Now, I know this might be a little bit confusing because I'm saying to you guys that the Feast of Trumpets is the next day that the Messiah is to fulfill. But in Matthew 24, uh, Yeshua's disciples asked him what will be the sign of his coming and the return of, and the end of the age. And he responded by sharing several details, and he gave them several parables, and he's finally quoted as saying, "But of that day," which they were asking about the day of his return, he says, "The day that no man," he says, "But of that day no one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels, but my Father in heaven. Watch therefore, for you don't know the day or the hour in which the Son of Man is going to return." Okay, that's the context there. But interestingly, remember we said that the Feast of Trumpets is the only day is on Tishri 1 and 2. So it's a 2-day period. And because of such, it is the only day on the biblical calendar that's 2 days long. And because it's the only day that's 2 days long, it became known as one long day, or the day that no man knows the day or the hour. So, do you remember that sign that we talked about around the time of the birth of the Messiah, that the wise men saw a sign in the heaven? They saw Jupiter moving backwards into the womb area, Virgo the Virgin, and then it came out 9 months later. Well, guess what? This year, that same sign is in the heavens right now. There's an app called Star Tracker that you can actually download on your mobile device and use to look at the constellations, and it will actually show you not only all the different constellations, but you can actually look at it and you can see Jupiter again moving towards the womb area of Virgo the Virgin. Now, this happens every couple thousand years. Okay, and this happened about 2,000 years ago. But there's an aspect of it that only happens every 7,000 years. Now, before I get into that, I want to read something to you, because if you go ahead and look at this app, download this app and look up, you're going to see something pretty interesting, which is you're going to see Virgo the Virgin, the moon, Jupiter moving backwards into the womb area. It's going to come out again. And you also see the Lion of Judah on the top of Virgo the Virgin's head. Now, why is this significant? Because if you turn to Revelation, the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, I want to show you why this sign is significant, why this is something not to be ignored, and at the very least, we need to watch and pray, just as the scripture says. Now, here's what Revelation 12, 1 and 2 says. Now, a great sign appeared in the heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. There's the sun on Virgo the Virgin. With the moon under her feet. There's the moon under her feet. All right. A garland of 12 stars on her head. Here's the 12 stars on her head, which is not just a garland, but it is Leo the lion, or should we say the lion of the tribe of Judah. And it says, and then being with child, she cried out in labor pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in the heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And 7 diadems on his head. His tail drew a third of the stars. Very long tail there. And it says, and the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she bore a male child who would rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and his throne. I want to stop there, but this is taking place right now. Now, every 2,000 years, we have Virgo the Virgin and the Jupiter moving backwards into the womb area of Virgo the Virgin and coming out 9 months later. Again, that happened about 2,000 years ago. Okay. And every 7,000 years, you get this alignment where you've got Virgo the Virgin, Jupiter, Leo the Lion, and then also this guy here, this dragon. Now again, if you use the Star Tracker app and look up, you will actually see all these things taking place now. So what's interesting about this, obviously there's a lot of things that are interesting about this, but the last time that this occurred, where we had Virgo the Virgin and Jupiter, the Messiah was born. So we're not saying that this means the Messiah is going to be born, but guess when this takes place? This takes place on September 23rd, 2017, which is the day after the Feast of Trumpets, which is the next day that the Messiah is to fulfill. So what are we saying here? Are we saying that September 23rd is the day that the Messiah is going to return? No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is the last time this happened, the Messiah was born. And if that doesn't occur, because this is an event that is of biblical significance, something that you read about, you have to watch and pray. So at the very least, we know that something very significant is transpiring. Now it says there in Revelation 12 that we looked up, and it says that the woman was getting ready to give birth. Now it could mean at the very least that the birthing process of the Messiah getting ready to return to the earth could begin at that time. Okay? But whatever we need to do, we need to make sure that we watch and pray just as the Messiah commanded us. But also, here's what the scripture says. Happy is the man that finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding, for her proceeds are better than the profits of silver and gold, and she is more precious than rubies. And all the things that you desire cannot compare with her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. So here's the bottom line. It's just important that we have this information so that we can know, just like it says of the tribe or the sons of Issachar, so that we can know what to do. Now, this is a very interesting event at the very least. And at the very least, you ought to pray about it and see if God reveals anything to you.